to render with cycle. By default, the Blender render will give you something like that. If you press F12, you have a quick render, but everything is very basic. You don't have details in the shades. You see the shadows are very linear. So what we'll do is change the engine from Blender here, Blender render, to cycles. Okay, cycle will give you a much better render. So if you press F12, it's a bit slower, but you see already that without any settings, you already have something much interesting in the render. Why? Because cycle uses global illumination, so there is no full black areas even when there is no light striking. And you see already the shadows are a bit more interesting. However, we are going to make few adjustments. So I press S to come back to the 3D view. In cycles, it's better to not use the default light, so I'm going to erase it. And you can directly see what you are setting in the rendered mode in the viewport shading. Okay, so it will give you a quick rendering of your final. Even if I move, you see very quickly it tells me what I'm doing here. So you see that without any light, I still have shadows and a kind of gray ambient light. This is because in my world scene that I can display, the setting I can display here from this button, this is to set the scene. The surface of this world, that means what is surrounding the scene, this area here, is gray. If I turn it to black, now the surface is not emitting anything and I have absolutely no light in my scene. This is what I want now because I just want to adjust the light I will create. So I'm going back in the solid view so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to create a plane that will be the light of the scene. So here, one plane, and I will rename it immediately lamp. And the other plane is the floor. So same, I'm going to rename it floor, if it's working, yeah. Floor. Good. So this plane, I will make it emit some light by changing its texture. So to change the texture of an object or its material, you have to open this tab. I'll create a new one, so I press new here. So you see it's creating one material. Same, I can rename it. For example, white light. And down, I will change the surface of this material, of this object, from diffuse to emission. There. Right. Now the material will emit this color with this power or strength. So if I go back in the rendered view, you see immediately the effect of this object on the rest of the scene. So I can push the strength of the emission, for example, and I can change the color of the lamp like yellow, orange, or blue if I want something cold. And every time I'm moving now this lamp, you will see the direct effect on the scene. So G, and I'm moving the lamp, for example, on the right, and you see how the shadow is moving and how the surface is lit in a different way. So I can create as many lights as I want. I can change its scales for also different effect. If I change that to a small object, it will emit a little light. A big object will have a completely different effect, much more light, and also different effect on the shadow. Even if I reduce the amount of light, look how the shadows are different here. There is almost no shadow because the emission is very, very broad. I'll scale it down. And let's, for example, duplicate it, Shift D, and move it somewhere else. Now I have two lights, and I can change the color of this one. Maybe here I'm changing everything because it's the same light. If I want to duplicate without duplicating the material, I have to break it here. And now I can change its color to something different. Okay, last thing I want to show is the number of samples here is 10. That's why it's so noisy. So I can change that in the render settings here and change this sampling number from 10. So preview is for this preview port and render is for rendering when I press F12. So here I'll enter 100, for example, and now you will see that slowly it will refine my scene. Render, I'll type, or maybe more, or even 250. And now when I press F12, it will be a bit slow, but you see how the noise is slowly going away. But it will take some time to render this full view. But at least the quality will be good.